Hey everyone, welcome back to Black Nerds Matter. Today we're excited to welcome Kory Lamberts, the founder and CEO of Aquatic Futures Foundation, also known as AFF. Kory is a passionate leader dedicated to building equity frameworks and reimagining how communities can thrive in the face of change. Through his work, he's been a strong advocate for justice, personal growth, and creating spaces where people can show up authentically. Hey Kory, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thank you for that intro. I appreciate it, man.
Of course.
I'm good. I'm sitting under a tree right now, vibing, running around getting some scuba things done. So feeling good. Happy I had a little time to hop on here. Thanks for waiting for me and being patient.
Of course, man. That seems pretty on brand for you, diving stuff while being under a tree. That's like your life every day, huh?
It kind of is, bro. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Um, just got back from a long weekend of diving with some future scientific diving students out in Catalina. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I try to stay wet more often than not. So
No, no, I totally get it. I'm excited to have you on the show. We've had a couple members from your board actually. We had 5K on before and Milan, so I'm really excited to talk to the head honcho of AFF and just see what you guys are doing. So with all
awesome.
that,
And then I guess just on the record to clear it up, Milan is a member of my board. Randy isn't on my board,
okay,
but he did help out with one of our events before. Yeah, and
okay,
we
okay.
support all of our shark scientists, but just on the record.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay. So yeah, with all that being said, yeah, we've talked a lot about things in the past. I mean, you personally talking about business and then science in general, but I want to know a bit more about you. So, where'd you grow up and how was life for you at home? I want to know what led you on this path that you're on today.
you want the long story or the short story?
Hey, we're on the podcast, brother. Give me the long story. People want to hear it.
Yeah. So definitely didn't grow up into the ocean as a diver, as a surfer, as a waterman. That like really wasn't my path. It came a lot later in life, and so I'm from a spot called Martinez in the Bay Area. It's like a little refinery town, nestled in the East Bay. It's pretty much like suburbs, predominantly white when I was growing up. And then the biggest like influences in the town were really it was like white and Mexican, and there was a couple black kids in each of my classes growing up, and so. Growing up, I was just I guess just a boy, you know. I like to run around, play around, get outside. I actually liked the beach when we'd go, but my mom didn't like sand. So whenever we went to the beach, it was kind of like this whole ordeal. And my mom like just doesn't really get off the blanket and doesn't want me to be like sandy in the car and stuff like that. So the beach wasn't that much of a thing, but I really love football and I really love football. I really love science too, actually. And I was kind of talking about this recently, this full circle moment recently, as I've been diving and getting more into scientific diving and my research and these projects and being around scientists like yourself and getting to be in spaces like TDP. Um, but growing up, my mom really always like pushed science and these types of things on me, right? Like I remember like watching like Magic School Bus and like Nat Geo, and she like really wasn't big on TV, so I only could like watch Animal Planet, and I had like a book called Hungry Hungry Sharks and a book about the wolves. And so I had like all these science books, right? Like I was actually, I mean, I think we're all born scientists, right? Like that's why
Hmm.
babies cry. But I was actually like a really sciencey kid, right? Like I loved projects, rockets, slime, like all these kind of things that any young kid does, any young scientist does. But being in this predominantly white space, not really having too many like positive influences and not knowing how I wanted to be myself, not knowing how I wanted to be a black man, not knowing how I wanted to show up in the world, and also being annoyed, confused, and angry at like why the system feels so weird at third grade, but not knowing why or what's going on. Um, Made me really like lean towards things like football, right? I was able to find community, I was able to get out anger, I was able to do these things. But at the same time that I kind of started leaning more into those types of things, I was getting pushed out of liking science, you
Hmm.
know? And so my mom as a young boy instilled the best that she could in me, science and like the exploration and knowledge and education. But despite all the hard work she did, like this system and like, having predominantly white teachers and just being in spaces that weren't accepting of me and my existence, like made me not like education and science. And so I don't know exactly when this shift happened, but I remember like in junior high or high school, me being like, oh, like, I don't like science and math anymore, and I
Hmm.
think it was because of like a couple teachers that I had, and what have you. And so life goes on in that respect. And so I'm going through high school playing football. My life's all about sports and football now. um Ended up going to junior college, playing football junior college, busting my butt, kind of having like one mission, and that was to get to the NFL. Ended up getting a full ride football scholarship to Middle Tennessee State in 2016. And man, like that was it, right? That was my dream. I finally made it, went D1, got the scholarship. As soon as I got the check, went out to Atlanta with my homies, bought a new grill. First things first, before I did anything, I bought a new grill with the check and was happy. I was like, I'm going to the league, I'm about to ball out. And then from there, the veil kind of started to peel back, right? I was always a smart kid, but thought I wasn't, and I thought that I was supposed to be this thing and this whatever, right? So I was spending so much time doing that. But when I got to Tennessee, that like, yeah, that all started to kind of fall apart. And I remember the school's mascot at Middle Tennessee State, it's a Pegasus.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking like, that's an interesting mascot. Like I get it, like Greek mythology, whatever. It's kind of cool. I'll take it. And then I think like my first semester at Middle Tennessee State, there was like some sort of protest or strike done by some of the students because there was a hall named after the founder of the KKK. And everybody's kind of like, what the hell? Like, like I don't think we're okay with this. So, they got the name of the building changed. And, throughout all that, I find out that the school's mascot's the KKK's leader's horse.
Oh my
His
God.
horse was named Lightning Bolt as well, and was represented sometimes as a Pegasus. And so I was like, that's when I put the full stop. You know, um, I had already kind of been becoming conscious, right? So like my whole young life was me trying to pretend I wasn't a nerd, which is actually like hilarious. Like that's what this podcast is named, and that's what all these things are, right? Like my whole life was like trying to hide that fact. Um, but I couldn't help but like investigating further on things that bother me. And that's like really where I find myself to find a lot of things that work for me is like if something bugs me and I dig deeper and I find some answers, right? And so once that happened, I kind of started to put the pieces together. I started to like look at pictures of like the NFL draft versus like slavery stock drafts on Wall Street and like the ways in which like they're measuring black men's jaws with calipers and like measuring tapes. And you look at like a picture of like NFL draft day, it's like the same thing, And like I remember I had coaches who were well-meaning like coaches, but they would like pat us on the back and be like, "Oh yeah, these are like our best ones," and like stuff like that. And I'm sitting there thinking like, "Yo, like I'm a whole like person and scientist and like being and like artist and like creative, but it was all so buried, but it was like fighting to get out, right?" Uh, so the story goes on. From there, I was like, I can't be here anymore, right? And so I call my family, I call everybody. I'm like, yo, like I'm quitting, I'm leaving. They're like, Kory, you're a junior in college. You're on track to go to the NFL. The guy whose position you took over, he just went to the NFL. All your friends are going to the NFL. Like, you're gonna be a millionaire in a couple years if you just don't quit. Like, just deal with it? And I'm sitting there like, no. I really can't just deal with this. Like I literally cannot just sit here and deal with it. And so I quit. I gave back the scholarship. I took him back the contract. I took back the money. I said, I don't want what you guys are offering. I'm gonna go ahead and take my health and my brain. Um, and I'll never forget it. The head coach there, looked me in the eyes and said, "You're never gonna do anything better than this. This is the worst decision in your life. This is the best chance you have." And I looked at him and I was like, dude, I actually don't think so. I really don't think so. And so I came back to California. I came back to California, man. And when I touched back down in California, I had no plan B. but I knew I was a year away from. Got a little garbage truck passing by. I knew I was a year to 2 years away from being a millionaire, right? And I remember around that time, a business person told me if your best business idea to become a millionaire is through sports, it's a pretty bad business idea. Statistically, it's not feasible. Um, Health wise, it's not the best idea, right? Like it's just not the best shake to trade your brain for money. So I came back with the goal of like, wanting to be successful and not really like for the reasons of like having like fancy things or nice things, but really it always was just so like I could have peace of mind and do the things I enjoy and be able to connect with nature and have my friends and family connect with nature. Um, but I didn't really see paths to that. I didn't really have friends at the time I was close with who were scientists. I didn't have friends who were working on documentaries. I didn't have friends who were lawyers like I do now. When I got done playing football, all my friends were either going to go to the NFL or be El Chapo or be like the pimp of the year. That's kind of like what all my friends were doing and thinking about trying to be. Legit like. Um, in the Bay Area, that's what's pretty prominent. It's one of the most expensive places to live in the world. Um, Housing inequities, food deserts. There's a multitude of social issues in the Bay Area that create these problems. Nevertheless, that was the cycle I myself slipped into. So I get done playing football. I come back. What do I do? I love plants. And so I get into farming. I get into farming cannabis. I had friends who were doing it on varieties of scales, some legal, some non-legal. And I found myself, taking my football work ethic and putting it into this new career. Right. And the best thing I've ever learned with sports is that if you work as hard as you work at a sport with anything in your life, you'll be really successful. Right. And so that's what I did. I came back from football. My kind of whole world was shattered. I had to pick back the pieces, figure out who I am. I never had a plan B. Um, and I came back and I started to do this and cultivate cannabis in the Bay Area. And at the time it was cool. It brought me a lifestyle similar to football. It allowed me to go around. It allowed me to do what I wanted. It allowed me tons of free time, and ultimately that time was really important because it allowed me to think and feel. um, and in that time, it was kind of funny. I was on this spiritual journey. I'm like, watching like Ricky Williams videos and seeing the way he quit football for spirituality. And I'm studying like, yoga and excuse me. At the time, I was getting into Islam and I'm studying religion and I'm meditating and I'm doing all these things, but at my house. And then when I leave the house, I'm doing all these things that don't reflect any of these things at all because spiritually I was conflicted and searching for who I am and what I wanted to be, and maybe on a spiritual level, how I was going to get led back to the water. But at that time, I had no idea of that yet. And so, I was kind of just running around the Bay Area for a couple years. I thought I had an aim, but looking back at it, it was pretty aimless. And it wasn't until July 30th, 2018, that I really had to sit down and look at my life a little bit different. On that evening, what was a pretty normal day for me transpired into pretty close to like a nightmare, man. Ended up in a situation where I was at one of my friend's houses in his mother's kitchen in West Oakland, California. And some guys came in looking for some things that they thought we had or suspected that we had and tried to take our lives for it. And I found myself, my best friend, and a few other friends I'm really close with still to this day. I was bleeding out. I got shot in the left arm and it ruptured my radial artery. Forgive me. And my best friend got shot and it was about a centimeter, I think they said, away from his heart. And so I find myself, how old was I? It's 2018. So I find myself at 23. Have done a couple of things, have been some places, but I was at this crossroads for the last 2 years. I was on this path of soul searching and trying to figure out who I am post football. Uh, I didn't realize initially when I got shot, 'cause I didn't even feel it. But by the time I got back upstairs with my friend who was laying down bleeding out, who thankfully survived, um, I realized I was bleeding out also. So I looked down and I was trying to cover my arm, and I didn't know if I should tourniquet it or wound pack it, but I knew that the blood coming out looked like artery blood from the movies, actually. I was like, this looks a little different. It felt a little different too. And so I actually ended up sticking my thumb in my arm, which then plugged it, stopped it, but then made it so I had compartment syndrome, where the swelling in my arm actually killed my nerves. So to this day, my radial nerve is dead, and I have no radial artery in my left arm, and I can't feel my left three fingers. So the fingers on this three hands, I can't use or feel them. I can't bend them fully. I've learned how to articulate them now. And actually, shouts out to the All In Ice Fest. Due to adaptive ice climbers, blind climbers, deaf climbers, climbers with cerebral palsy, amputee climbers, and all of the people that taught me how to use my hand, I wouldn't be the scuba diver, the athlete, the jujitsu player, or the rock climber that I am today without those people. I just had to plug them real quick. Um, and I'm gonna get, I don't want to misquote her name or say it wrong right now on camera. I know this isn't live, but it's recorded. Are you punching these things in and editing them? Not, I don't want to make the editing too hard. Grab her.
Oh, oh, yeah.
Awesome. So, like I was saying, yeah, that night in that gunshot, after having to plug my radial artery, the compartment syndrome, it left my three fingers without feeling, numb and partially paralyzed. And so, through my connections and getting to go climb with all the amazing climbers at All In Ice Fest, started by Dr. Liz, I was actually able to regain that confidence, learn how to use my hand. And so whenever I think about that night or my hand, I always think about All in Ice Fest and Liz and all the work that they do. But so that evening right there, I remember kind of as I was like holding my arm, worried if I was going to bleed out, if my best friend was going to bleed out. I remember sitting there thinking, what is this, man? Like, what is my life? What am I really here for? And like, what's my purpose? Am I meant to like die right here at 23 after doing all these things I want to do and want to see and want to experience? Like how, I want to see these things. And so I just remember kind of being there praying and really talking to the Most High, just like, man, let's get through this and figure out what's next. I want to do something different. So that was in 2018. From there, I had really bad infections for like 9 months to a year and was fighting the criminal cases that persisted from this event. And so for that whole year, I was like really in a haze. I wasn't, I was on pain medicine. I'm having fevers and infections. I'm at my mom's house. It was pretty topsy-turvy, and that whole year was kind of a blur. But I had a really good friend from Northern California, from up in Humboldt, who actually was like came down to my house, saw the state I was in, and talked to my mom and was like, "Yo, Corey's not doing good. I'm gonna have him come live with me in Humboldt and get his mind right." And so I went up to Humboldt. I was hanging out, and that's really where I got connected to the ocean on a deeper level, and I reconnected with my spirituality in the outdoors. And so I was up there for like a year, kind of just hanging out. And then it came upon me again. I was like, yo, I want to learn again. I want to be back in science. I want to be touching knowledge again. And I decided to go back to Humboldt State. And so this time going back to school, I was like, I want to learn exactly what I want to learn. When I was playing football, they make you do like business degrees. You can't really study what you want to learn. And so I was like, this time around, I want to do exactly what I want to do. So I set out to major in environmental studies with a focus in social justice. And I wanted to look at the intersection of how environmental crises are always or almost always inherently social justice crisis, and looked at how those two things are combined and how, due to most environmental fields being white dominated fields, and most science fields being white dominated fields, we don't ever see the crossover, or the crossover doesn't seem as organic of the hard sciences that we say and of the social sciences. And, to me, and I think to Black people, and really people who are close to the land and indigenous people globally, are all always seeing the interconnectedness of these things because it's our lived experience. Um, and so that was really what I set out to do in school. At this point, I'm still not even into scuba, which is crazy. And so I believe I ended up finding a surfboard on Craigslist for like 35 bucks. Found like a wetsuit on Craigslist for like 35 bucks. Started surfing up in Humboldt on like a soft top board, and I was getting after it, right? That made me fall in love with the ocean on a whole new level. I started to connect with the ocean on a deeper level. And I remember the first time I saw the backside of a rock from the ocean. And which is funny because that was the same time I wrote one of my first papers. I'm tired of talking about the rocks. What about the people? Which is hilarious. But I'm looking at the backside of this rock and I'm watching like a seagull attack a crab who's like attacking something else. And I'm looking at this crazy, like, aquatic food chain from the backside of this rock on the ocean at like 6 a.m. in a surfboard all by myself in the freezing cold of Humboldt. And I'm thinking, yo, you could never see this from shore. Like, you could see something like this from shore, but like this perspective right here that I'm having right now, you couldn't have unless you were right here, right now to see this. And that made me like really fall in love with the ocean. And so I still wasn't into scuba. And so then I had this sociology teacher, lame sociology teacher. I'm not even going to say his name, but he was teaching at Humboldt when I was there. And I remember first couple weeks of lectures, I'm already like, I'm gonna be sick of this guy. I won't bore you with this part of the story, but long story less long, his lectures sucked. Halfway through one of his lectures, I said to him, "Hey, man, I'm dropping your course. I can't do this." I go to the head of the department, Dr. Sarah Ray, whose podcast I just talked on last week, and I'm like, "Yo, Dr. Ray, I cannot do this. I need to drop this guy's course and get out of it." She's like, "Kory, it's sociology. It's a core requirement for your major. There's nothing I can do about it." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I don't think you're hearing me. I've came too far to not learn exactly what I want to learn, and I'm not learning from idiots. And so I'm gonna leave school, or please help me how to do this." And she obviously didn't want me to leave, right? And so she's like, "Kory, we have like two classes available that you can switch it to. One scientific scuba diving, and one is like something I didn't have prerequisites for." And I'm like, "What scientific scuba diving?" Like literally just like that. And she's like, "Oh, well, it's like a diving class that teaches you how to be a scientific scuba diver so that you can use like scientific method underwater." And I'm like, "Could I tell the story of environmental degradation and social injustice through the lens of the water?" And she's like, "Yes." I said, "Put that in my major." And so I ended up majoring with environmental studies with a focus in social justice and a minor in scientific scuba diving. And that is where I got my AAUS scientific diver under Rich and Steve at Humboldt State. That was an amazing program. Being a Humboldt diver makes you respectfully to all other divers that cut above the rest of divers. Diving in Humboldt is a extremely um, intense and dynamic diving environment. California coast is always very dynamic, but Humboldt is a little bit extra. And so my experience with them made me fall in love with the ocean. It made me feel safe, but I couldn't help but realize any Black person knows when you're the only Black person in a space, there's kind of nothing else you can think about uh, when that thought comes to mind. Every now and then you can kind of exist for a bit and you don't think about it, but there'll be like one time a day, at least for me, where I'll like objectively look around and be like, "Yeah, I'm the only Black person here. It's kind of weird." And usually it's not too bad, but sometimes it comes with a microaggression, which never are very micro, or a full-blown aggression, so those spaces can be pretty uncomfortable. Um, for the most part, my experience was nice and humble, but I also just couldn't help feel, yo, like, where are all the Black people, you know? And so I instantly reached out to the National Association of Black Scuba Divers. I sent them a message, um, and I actually like CC'd a bunch of them on it because I was like, I'm so excited. I want someone to respond. And Cortland, the safety officer, actually responded to me. Doctor, or no, he's not a doctor. I'm sorry. Uh, Safety officer Cortland Butts responded to me and like called me and he's like, "Hey, like who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Kory. I want to come dive with you." He's like, "I just came out of a lecture at Stanford, but let me finish this, call you, and I'll get you the details." Um, they got back to me. I somehow finessed it to go on their retreat. It was during COVID. I talked to the dean of Humboldt at the time, Dr. Dean Ebony Turnbow, and she actually got me the funds to go on this retreat to go meet them in St. Lucia. And I went out and dove with like a group of like 100 OG black divers, all in like their 50s and 60s, who had been diving for years. And I saw this rich diving culture as well as camaraderie, as well as organization. And I said, like, I think this is what I'm gonna do for my life. And yeah, like I guess that was the saga of how I even got to diving. From there, I got hired by USC, moved down to Catalina, and I think that's this new iteration, but that's like a whole new chapter, if not a whole new book. So I just yapped a bunch. I want to put a pause there real quick. Um, that's like Kory up until I was diver Kory.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you dropped some serious lore there. There's a lot of things to unpack. I mean, just even near death experience, kind of seeing where you wanted to, almost changing where you wanted to be twice in life. It seemed like you had the part at school. You almost had two parts in
hmm
school when you were ready to flip the script. You had one football, you were done, and here with this guy's lecture, I'm done. So that's
hmm
interesting. So what has all of that taught you about pivoting in life and how resilient you are as a person?
Mm. So this is my biggest thing. I love it, and people always like have a knee-jerk reaction to it. And I have a lecture on this I give too. But I learned to say no. I learned to say no. And I think for me at least, as a young boy with a single mom, it made me a people pleaser because I always wanted to see my mom happy. And then growing up, uh, as like one of the only black kids in school, oftentimes I think that also kind of made me a people pleaser because I was always on the radar and I had to learn how to like not get targeted and more than I already was. Kind of keep a low profile despite being like super hyper and talkative and all these things. It made me kind of like a people pleaser. And so I think like I always had this perception that I had to say yes to everything. And if I don't
Hmm.
take every opportunity, whoop de whoop, and long story lets long. But I started to realize everything in my life has came from saying no to what makes me feel uncomfortable. And you see this a lot from babies. I think you see this a lot from like, my nieces and my nephews teach me this a lot. And I think babies are really good at setting boundaries. But the things that you don't like, don't do, and I think, obviously there's some limiting factors to this depending on who you are and what your disposition is, but like I'm someone who's like down to try everything and
Hmm.
willing to do things, and so for me like my no's are different, right? I'm not saying to limit yourself and not try new things, but there
Hmm.
are certain things in life that, at 20, at 30, we pretty much know we don't like. I know I don't like being talked to like that. I know I don't like it when I go to a room and my stomach feels like this. I know I
Hmm.
don't like it when I share my heart and it's not received, right? So there's certain things we can learn that we don't like. And so for me, it was like every time my spirit and my soul said no on a serious level, I listened, right? And so I'm at college and it's like, hey, like, do you want to be a millionaire in a couple years or do you want to wear the KKK's horse on your head? And I said, I don't want to do that. I don't know if I want $1 million or not, but I know that I don't want to do that, right? And so I took the no. It was easy. And then when I was doing what I was doing in the Bay Area, living that lifestyle, and finding myself having to buy lawyers and have my mom scared and, have my friend's mom's house raided by the police and all these types of things that were happening from actions that I was making or was a part of. I said, no. I said, I don't know what is going to happen on the other side, but no, I don't want this anymore. Went to school, didn't like the professor on a spiritual reason, on a core reason. I said, no, I don't like this anymore. Um, and then in that final iteration, it was when I was working at USC, and USC brought me out to be the head of their quasi diversity thing they were talking about running. That was really just,
Hmm.
from my perspective, a money grab. They had hired me on thinking I would be the token who was going to sing and dance and open Cracker Jacks for them, and that didn't happen. After they saw that I was about my business, a good diver, a diver who wanted to progress and really make waves in marine science. Um,
No pun intended.
yeah, literally, right? They were like, no, we're not going to do this. And so they started to retaliate against me. They started to leave me out of meetings. They started to do all different types of things, which ultimately led to me filing a Title IX uh, attempts at a Title IX lawsuit. It went to their internal USC Title IX adjuster. As soon as he answered the call, I realized he worked for USC and not the people. And I said, maybe I'll find a way to circle back and handle this. But I need to leave. This isn't for me either. This is a no, you know? And that led me to starting the Aquatic Futures Foundation. And so for me, all of my no's, I never had to say yes, and I never had to pick anything I'm doing. And everything I'm doing now is by faith, by the ocean, and by this path that has really been laid out long before I could touch it. And everything seems easy and everything seems coincidental, but I know none of it is. And it came from all these hard nights and these hard decisions and these hard conversations with myself. Um, and then I guess I just wanted to go back to this piece, and I don't know how relevant it fully is, but I guess just thinking
Hmm.
about being at Catalina, being out at Wrigley reignited the scientist in me also, right? And I think you've got to go out to that facility as well, I believe.
To Wrigley, no. I've dove at Catalina, but
You
I
haven't.
haven't been to Wrigley yet.
Okay. Okay. So at Wrigley, essentially it's a college campus on Catalina. It's a USC satellite campus, and it has labs and it has all these things, and it has the potential to be like the pinnacle of diving. Right. It has the potential to be like, oh my God, it's this lab where the future of marine science is getting pushed, where they're kicking out great divers, where all this amazing, these projects in science and food equality and land and water rights. There could be like so much cool stuff happening, but it's kind of like this, like it's just like this kind of like semi-dated and aged, kind of feels like you teleport back in time, like little. It feels like a play science set,
Hmm.
more than like a real lab. And, not to discredit the real scientists who do get work done there. And I know there are some. But essentially that like re-triggered the little scientist in me. And it actually took being out there, being a part of this university, seeing the way that some of the things were being ran at the highest level for me to be like, well, no, no, no. I like science. I like the ocean. I like marine science. I'm a scientist. Let me find a way to really get back into science myself, because once again what I'm seeing doesn't look right and feel right. And so that was like the final, I don't like this, the final no that really pushed me into it. It was one, the racism, but also the blatant disrespect for science. I'm like,
Hmm.
yo, let's do some dope projects. We have a science, we have the research facility right here on a marine protected area. We could prove any hypothesis that we wanted to for food, for food equality, for job sourcing, for CO2 scrubbing, for ozone protection, whatever we wanted to solve right now, we have the perfect space, and we're like playing games. And I was infuriated. I was infuriated, man. And I guess that's how I decide what I want to do. I just go off of what isn't right, and I was like, well, what would be, you know? Yeah.
Okay. I see what you there's so many layers to what you just said. I'm thinking even the nuance of saying yeah, this is something that's happening to me, but do I want it? And it was interesting saying how you talk about babies and their boundaries, but I think that's very valid in a lot of senses because as you get older, you learn what you really do want and what you don't want. And like you said, you still have to be someone who's willing to try anything. Because I know some
Hmm.
people who have kind of pigeonholed themselves into certain perspective or areas because they're not willing to try anything and also like, oh, this is uncomfortable, so I don't want to do it. But uncomfortable and harm are two very different things. And sometimes they
Exactly.
can feel the same, depending on who you are, what you've
Mm-hmm.
experienced, whatever the case may be. And so
Hmm.
I wanted to dig a little deeper into some of the things you've done, especially to fuel yourself in these situations. So you're saying you were dealing with scientists, dealing with some of these things that made you unhappy. I saw on your Instagram you're doing things like ice climbing, videography, surfing, all these things. So what are some things that you really do to fuel your creative mind and fuel your body? And I want to know how these things make you a nerd.
Definitely, man. Thank you. The question is, how do I fuel up all the things that I'm doing? How do I recharge and get the energy to make these decisions? Is that the question exactly?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, pretty much just like how doing the things that fuel you allow you to keep going through these hardships. And I want to know
Hmm.
more about
Hmm.
like the ice climbing and the diving and the
Yeah.
surfing and all those kind of things because I see the skateboarding that you do. Like that
Hmm.
stuff's really important and I
Mm.
think a lot of people, especially black people, have to realize that we're more than just our career and our science and our money. What we
Yeah.
do and what we love really makes up the totality of the person we are.
So true. And so, don't tell anybody this. This is my deep secret, but I do all these things just to hang out with my friends, and I surround myself with people who never cease to amaze me, who I look at with googly eyes because I think they're the coolest people on the planet. And I get to do all these things with my cool ass friends. That's the cheat code for me. Um, but surfing, ice climbing, taking photos of my friends in the water on surf videography or on photos or on underwater photography and diving or going spearfishing with my friend Dustin or a phone call with Tan or a phone call with Iman and going on a nature hike and going to see some hot springs. You know, all of these things bring us like so much joy on these like deep levels. And I think because we don't look at ourselves always as black people, we don't like see ourselves like doing science and all these things, right? But I remember
Hmm.
like years back, I remembered seeing how like if you can like do a 360 dunk with a basketball, it means you have like the physics computing power of Einstein. And like
Oh
we don't
wow.
think about it like that, but to think about like, okay, if I'm moving at like 5 miles an hour and I'm gonna like stop, I'm gonna do a pull-up jumper from the 3-point line right now. I need to put this ball at what arc angle, at what rotation speed, at what release from my fingers. Like there's such high level computation happening to shoot a basketball or to stop in the middle of traffic, do a 360 and do a finger roll layup. Like that is high level physics. You know what I mean? And it's like the
Yeah.
same way with surfing. Like that is fucking high level physics. I'm looking at a wave that came from space that was made from interplanetary pressure that then created wind, that wind then created a small ripple in the ocean that then compounded off the ocean floor and the ocean surface for thousands of miles that compiled and condensed to a wave that I'm now trying to find a flat plane on to surf. Like what? So like I think unlocking my brain and allowing myself to realize the things we do and the natural inquiries we have are science and all of these things like are nerd outable, and like all my friends
Hmm.
are now like hyper focused on their passion. You go over to any of my friends' house, the kitchen table is covered with the project of the week. And it's like, well, what is this? And they're like, oh, well, I'm dissecting this camera to figure out how I can make it work better underwater and then put it in this different housing to we're scientists. We've been scientists and our life is science. And I think a book that really helped me realize that was Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer.
Hmm.
And in that book, she talks about how she blends her traditional ecological knowledge from being an indigenous woman with her, forgive me, Robin, if I misquote, but I think it's I think she is a botanist, or she's some field where she works with plants. And she talks about how she watched her family, and the ways in which they operated and saw the science within that. And so I think that liberated me to find the science within. And then it's like, yeah, sometimes I do need to go into the ocean and not talk with anybody for 45 minutes and stare at a fish because shit's been crazy. And, my friends' families are getting deported. And then, we have all of these things happening. And I think it's kind of funny right now with, I guess funny isn't the word, but it's just, I find it ironic, like with what's happening with, the current political structure of the country is because I felt like this my whole life. I felt like this at third grade. I felt like our academics were under attack at third grade, but now it's a little bit more prevalent and more in everybody's face. And so I think now more than ever, finding these times to go surf, to go rock climb, to go ice climb, to go dive, to go to the beach for 5 minutes and take a deep breath, are massive, and they recalibrate the way our brain works. Um, and actually, I'm gonna find the quote for this too, so we can quote her because she was amazing. I just followed her on Instagram, but there was a Kenyan woman who was talking about an African philosopher by the name of. Did I just freeze the recording again? Hopefully not, but I know I wrote his name down right here and I have it. Um, Tell me I saved it. Sorry, I don't know where I put it. Um, but he was talking. I'll link both of those so you can throw them in there. He was talking about in a lot of the East African languages that he studied, the ways in which the concept of the future didn't exist, and
Hmm.
it made me think about like the name Aquatic Futures Foundation a lot. But they talk about how time has to be experienced and it has to be lived to be real. Therefore, the near future exists, the present exists, and the past exists, and time is actually unraveling backwards as we wait for it. It's a pretty trippy concept when you're looking at it from the Western point of view, but it makes a lot of sense. And so, like, I guess, for example, sitting under a tree and waiting, in a lot of these cultures, when we look at it from a Western point of view, it's like, hey, you're wasting your time. And when they
Hmm.
look at it, they're almost waiting for their time, or they're creating more time, which I find is fascinating. And with one of my best friends, Big Tan and I create time. And so I guess the cap of this, my answer is doing these activities that connect you to nature and connect you to science allow you to create time. And so when you spend time with your loved ones and your friends in these natural places, you're cultivating an energy within inside yourselves, and I think within inside the universe, that creates the world and the reality that you want. And I think that's what the Aquatic Futures Foundation stands for. That's what I stand for. And that's what the future is. It is what we currently are building and manifesting with inside of our own hearts, inside of our own communities, and with inside of our own landscapes. And that's what shapes the future. And that concept rocked me. And I can't ever think about Aquatic Futures Foundation and what I'm doing, um, again, without thinking about how we constantly are creating the future from the things we're doing right now. And that's what I get from those things. Yeah.
There's a quote I always think about is that and I actually got this from Paul Barber from the Diversity Project, and he said there's never never a right time for anything. It's like you have to make time. Like there's no
Hmm.
perfect time. Like if you want to have a family, you want to do these things, you have to make the time for it. And that's something that I really live by, given the things that you said. Because when it comes to things you want to do or things that energize you, you have to make time for. They won't make time for themselves. And you can have a like for me, for instance, this is something I had learned in my own life is I can have 2 or 3 days of surfing or diving or doing something outdoors for myself, and I feel that that is just as impactful or trying to think of the word productive as a day of me doing research or publishing
Yeah.
something or
Yeah.
creating something new, because I just realized how important it is to replenish my own reserves and do things for me, because I was always having this kind of grind mindset of I got to keep working.
Yeah.
I pretty much uh, defined myself by how much money I was making or how well I was doing in school or like my perspective stuff from my career, but I never thought about how I am as a person and what that means. And now I have so many things that define me that if any of those things go bad or something bad happens, I'm still feeling great. When I only have one thing to
Yeah.
define me, if that one thing goes down, I'm at zero. But if I have five things that
Hmm.
define me and one thing goes down, I'm still at 80%, and that's still good. I can live at a B. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's just I loved hearing that perspective of you because it really makes me think of that concept because now I'm like, okay, I'm a good diver, I'm a good surfer, and I'm good at science. My science career isn't doing too good right now, where I got laid off from a job, whatever the case. Yeah, I'm still a good surfer and still climber. I still like my life. It's just this part of my life isn't the focus right now, and that's okay. And I think that's an
Hmm.
important thing for people to learn is that we really have to make ourselves happy, and it's not like we're kids anymore. Mom and dad make play dates for us and set up events for us to take care of ourselves. We have to do that ourselves, and I feel like that's a
You got to figure
it's
it out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's not like a lost art, but it's just something I think is very hard to adjust to. Even like, when you leave school, you're used to having school events for this fun stuff going on and you just show up. But no, we have to make those events for ourselves now and it's different.
Yeah, you got to be intentional. You got to build these things. I was actually talking to a friend like, yo, we got to start planning some camping trips. Like I want to like make sure I camp with the homies, like we got to really plan to do these recharges, plan to go on these surf trips because if you don't, you know, it's hard to make happen. Dude, we got to hop on again and do another one of these. I feel like I'm cutting it short. I'm my next meeting I need to run over to and this has honestly felt super easy and I actually
Yeah, yeah.
never talk about like football or getting shot ever, which is like kind of funny because like it's usually like what most people ask, but I don't like feel comfortable enough with most people. And there's like not a space like Black Nerds podcast that I would like feel comfortable doing it on other than like with you, and like on this podcast because like I think this is where it makes sense because this is my story and my intersection, and yeah, I'm super thankful for this space and like I want to build it out more if you'll have me again and talk
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
And next time I won't be on well, actually I can't promise that. Next time I'll probably be on the go again and it'll probably be just like this, actually, but I'll
Yeah.
be excited for it. And I would love to. So yeah, thanks for working with me, man, and being flexible.
No, of course. Court, thank you so much for being on the show. I mean, I want everyone listening to help support AFF, Aquatic Futures Foundation. We'll probably talk more about some of these things as time goes on. But honestly, man, this show is all about us talking about Black professionals, their experience, and who they are as people, not just what we do. So I'm loving that you're feeling comfortable sharing those things. And I think it's profound, and our viewers will get something for it. So again, thank you for your time, bro. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Of course, man. Um, is there I guess outro. You can just link AFF and all this stuff. I don't really want to have to shout it all out. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, that's cool.
Okay, sweet, sweet, man. And then I'm
All right.
walking for like 2 minutes once the recording's done. We can just chat also.
Okay.
Um,
Cool. And with everyone else, thanks for that. Black Nerds Matter is out. Peace.
Peace.